Okay, so the affirmative side first. Excuse me. If the resolution is, should public education be privatized, who is willing to jump in and get started? On that point. Yes, Marion.
Well, when I watched the video and with some of like the stuff that I read, I saw that it's really not the question of like public versus private. It's like public education could be improved a lot by the teachers that they have.
Okay, very good. That's a very good point. Okay, so how the teacher effectiveness. Very good. Okay, that is a very valid point, and that is definitely has been an issue for several years in education. Does your article mention how to get there? How do you improve teacher effectiveness?
Well, mine talks about the like effects of No Child Left Behind.
Right. Okay.
And how it has helped, but how it could be improved to like be more effective.
Okay. Okay. Let's go this way. So we got Megan, Leah, and Catherine. Go ahead, Megan.
Mine also talked about No Child Left Behind and how they could reform it.
Okay.
And gave some examples.
Okay, so reform.
Just reform teachers in general.
No Child Left Behind. Okay, let's talk about that.
They basically said that like they brought in the tenure thing and how teachers that are reaching that point a lot of times show a little more apathy after they reach that point because their job is guaranteed. And if there was a way we could like not do that as much, not use it as much, or kind of like lay off doing that,
Right. Okay.
it would benefit the effectiveness of the teacher.
Very good. Okay.
as a whole.
Now, first of all, the teacher tenure issue. Tenure's been around forever.
Right.
It did come in with No Child Left Behind. Okay. It's probably been an issue forever. Okay. So what Megan's referring to is this, the apathy. The teacher it usually takes 3 years to get tenure. You're considered a probationary teacher, and you are evaluated every year, and twice a year, 3 times, 4 times a year, whatever the labor union, the labor contract designates, and then you are passed. And once you are approved for tenure, so as you saw in Waiting for Superman, it's almost impossible to get rid of a tenured teacher. Okay, no matter how good, how bad they are. Okay. But, okay, so tenure is one issue, but how do you give incentive to teachers to improve teacher effectiveness? Okay, so let's go, it was Leah, Catherine, then Sarah. Okay, go ahead.
Mine was like comparing school achievement.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to hang on to that point. We can come back to it. Okay, so, school achievement. Okay.
So basically, like public schools thought to promote like equal education for all children, but then like when you compare the education or the quality of education between like public and private schools, like it's not equal based on achievement levels.
Well, okay, so you're saying you found some research that says that private schools outperform public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, has anybody else come across that? Okay, Dylan, very good. Oh, yeah, okay. Now, so did all of your research say that private schools are better than public schools, or was it mixed? Did anybody find something that public schools outperform? You found public schools outperform private?
It was in certain areas.
Yeah. Okay.
Private schools outperformed on like SAT, but public schools did a better job like in the classroom.
Right, okay. So absolutely, the point is you have to disaggregate the data and break it down by reading comprehension, math. Pardon?
Mine is broken down into those categories.
Yeah.
Reading comprehension, math.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The point I'm making is that those are the best studies. You can't just make this gloss statement that one school form is better than the other. But in fact, when you start breaking it down, then disaggregate the data that you might, it becomes more mixed. Okay. And but back to your point, Leah. So you're suggesting that in terms of comparing apples to oranges, private schools outperform. Okay.
And that the education vouchers can allow families with different socioeconomic backgrounds to have the same opportunity in terms of education.
Okay, very good. Okay, now I just want to see, we will give the other side a chance to argue opposition to this. So Dylan, did anybody else find articles that suggest that public schools actually outperform? Okay, very good. Make sure you guys chime in when we go to the other side. You'll get your day, okay, but we got it. giving these folks, the affirmatives, a chance to spill, lay it out on the table. Okay, I said Catherine and then Sarah. Go ahead.
Mine was also like about No Child Left Behind, but it was saying like schools need to be held accountable for what they're doing.
Right. Okay.
Because a lot of what happens within public schools and No Child Left Behind is that teachers are under so much pressure to meet like the 2014 like deadline that they're starting to pass students like who should not be passed.
Okay. Very good. So school accountability, but the pressure of the test, okay? Now, did anybody come across, regarding No Child Left Behind, did anybody come across research that indicates that the gains that have been produced by, since 2001 to maybe 2004, 6, 8, 10, does anybody have data on that? Okay, the PowerPoint presentation that you guys saw on Tuesday, and I posted on Tuesday, if you get into that, it looks at No Child Left Behind, and it actually shows the gains that have been made. Okay, and that came as a shock to me because when we came back into California in 2002 and 3, all I heard was negative responses and just almost vitriol for No Child Left Behind coming from teachers. So all I thought of it was, I always had a negative impression of it, but I saw those gains, and I thought, my goodness, this is impressive that gains have been made. But to Kevin's point, what is the pressure of the test? What is the issue of the test with No Child Left Behind? Okay, Sarah.
It leads to like high stake testing, and
Okay, now what do you mean by high stakes?
it's basically like they have so much pressure for their class to do well on this test in comparison to other schools and stuff, because that's how the schools get funding and
Exactly.
they teach to the test.
School funding it's determined by gains, okay? The school has to show gains from this year's testing compared to last year's testing. And how do we measure that gain? By the test. So everything is about the test. Is there a negative side? Even though, as I indicated, No Child Left Behind does seem to be showing some gains. But what is the downside or the negative side to teaching the test? Corinne?
Well, Mark also talked about how since they're teaching to the test, they often spend more time on those subjects. So like they'll like miss out on other kinds of subjects that aren't necessarily going to be on the test, such as like.
Okay, so it really constrains education. If everything's about the test, because the test is the most important thing. It's all about the test. The students have to do well in the test. Did anybody come across literature or research about the scandals that emerged, like in Atlanta school district, Houston school districts, regarding the principals who got together and changed the students' test to make it get the appearance that they actually tested higher than they did, so that the school could get those gains? Did anybody come across literature? That probably would not find its way into journal articles. Those are the blog site type articles. But anyway, okay, go ahead, Mary.
Not only did it like narrow the focus, it showed that one of the studies I had showed that teachers kind of like try to patch everything in, so they brush over subjects. So like they don't really know if their students are learning it. They just want to make sure they cover it.
Oh, okay, so so you're saying that the teachers aren't checking for learning. They're not necessarily.
They're making sure they're teaching all the certain things around the test, but they
Right.
aren't necessarily testing them to make sure that they're retaining the information
Right,
at the
okay.
proper time, other than the end of the year test.
Well, I mean, that's the purpose. We call that assessment. In education, you have an objective, okay, that you hope the students will receive and through the delivery of the instruction process. You have exercises, homework, and so on to reinforce it, and then you come along a week later and you do an assessment exercise, a test, okay? The further test is to assess if the objective and the mastery of learning were achieved. How do you measure that? They either have to perform something, but in a lot of cases, it's easier to give a test, okay? And so, anyway, so somebody's breaking down in that process, and so that comes down to the pedagogical process. And, it's not something that you would find only in public schools, but in private schools as well. Okay, so we're running down time. Does anybody else have anything to contribute here on why, on the affirmative argument, why public schools should be privatized? Anyone over here? Okay, Dylan, go ahead. Well, now, but you're on the negative side, right? Oh, you are on the positive side. Okay, go ahead.
I have some studies that show that it is potentially a cheaper option if the entire system was privatized and we were able to cut educational taxes.
Okay, so you think that there's an economic,
Yeah. 'Cause
benefit.
in class, you stated that it takes about 24 grand to put a public school through.
That was LA Unified. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if you go back to that PowerPoint presentation, about the third or fourth slide, indicates how public schools systems have privatized much of their operation. Food service, okay? Landscaping, okay? Those are all things that have to take place. You walk around Mercer campus, and just yesterday they were blowing the leaves, and you see them out cutting the ground. Somebody has to maintain the ground, right? Especially what kind of field are the football teams going to have to play football on if the grounds aren't maintained? So a lot of those systems are outsourced. Teacher training, who trains teachers? Anybody here in the TIF School of Education? Anybody? Okay, David, who trains teachers? Well, universities, universities, okay. And after you get your 4-year undergrad in and do a 5th year of student teaching, TIF School of Education will help you apply for your teacher licensing for Georgia. Every state has teacher licensing, okay. So it's only the huge districts like Los Angeles Unified does their own in-house teacher training, and those are usually people that they've hired on a BA without a teaching credential, and then they have in-house service to try to get them fully credentialed and licensed. But anyway, so there's a lot of functions that are already outsourced, okay? The difference in private schools is they're usually a very small site, right? They don't have a lot of lawn to mow, they don't have a lot of grounds to upkeep, they only have one school, right? It's a private school, they don't have a whole chain. And anyway, so, I don't know that, what the real cost is, Dylan, is in the administrative end of it, okay? It's not so much the food service, the grounds, the teacher training, all the things that are already outsourced, okay? But it's all the administrative costs, okay? Everything that goes on in that big administration building. Anyways, okay. Okay, we need to switch sides, okay? So we have the affirmative. Now, on the negative. Now you guys on the affirmative side will have a chance to come back and give a rebuttal to what I'm going to put on the board on the negative side. All right, so let's go negative. Now, by suggesting that, arguing that public schools should not be privatized, you're basically affirming the public school, the common school. You're saying it's a good model, and yeah, okay, it has problems, but it can work, okay? So who's arguing that angle, that public schools are actually doing a pretty good job? Oh, come on, you guys, we took a straw poll before last week, and half of you said you were going to argue it this way. Did anybody come across Common Core? You guys been arguing. Now, a lot of you guys have been arguing against No Child Left Behind. Does anybody want to? Did anybody find any positives in No Child Left Behind, such as the gains that I mentioned? Okay, what about Common Core? Now, you know what, you guys? If you were arguing for charter schools, you're actually arguing on the side of public schools. Because charter schools are not private. They're kind of a hybrid, it's kind of a semi-private. It's a semi-autonomous, but they're dependent economically and financially on the public school system. And the teachers generally, come from the public schools. And so it's a hybrid. Did anybody come across any research on the charter schools? Nobody? Really? It's such a phenomenon. I mean, what did the video that you guys watched, Waiting for Superman, what position did it adopt on charter schools, Catherine?
It liked charter schools because it gave impoverished children in impoverished areas the chance to get out.
Right.
And have a chance at a higher education, and higher education means that they have a chance to get out of poverty.
Very good. Okay. Now, What was the principal, what of the charter schools feature, was there a particular one, a particular brand that was featured in the Waiting for Superman? Do you remember the KIPP schools? Yeah, okay, and Jeffrey Canada, okay, and others, okay. I just came across an article, and the article is how are KIPP schools really successful or something like that? Are they effective? Okay, so it's just looking at the population of KIPP schools, not necessarily comparing it against other school systems, okay? And they found it to be actually a very effective system, okay? But now, so nobody did any research on charter schools? Nobody has anything here to say about charter schools?
I did.
Okay, what did you find, Hannah?
I found in one article it said that they actually help the children within the school that have the more needs. They help them the most. They have the most help of like most kids that usually get the attention, who have the better grades. They actually bring those who had the worst grades up.
Okay, yeah, the collective effect of mixed levels, okay? So basically what Hannah is saying is that if you arrange the classroom such that you have weaker students and strong students, okay, is the strong students are able to elevate the performance, academic performance and outcomes of the weaker students, okay? And so that's by design. Can you do that in a you have to be able to do that in a very controlled environment, you know, small class size, okay? And that's one of the advantages of the charter schools, is they feature small class size, okay? But let me ask you this. Have all the charter schools been equally successful as the KIPP schools? Okay, Megan, shake your head. What can you say about that?
I found like a study that they compared public schools in one area to some charter schools in one area.
Right.
It was like 5 different areas they tested, and both of them had their advantages and disadvantages, but neither of them actually outweighed, like, proved that charter schools are better or public schools are better.
Okay.
In any of those 5 areas.
Okay. How would you explain that? let me explain it this way. There's a population of charter schools out there. Okay, some like the KIPP schools and others are doing really, really well. They're very selective. They bring kids in that they think will be successful. Okay, obviously they want to bring in. They must see something in kids who are maybe less achieving, but they think they have some potentiality there they can draw out of them by putting them in a mix of students who are more high achieving. But there's a lot of charter schools out there that were initiated because of they were at-risk students. Did I mention this on Tuesday? I talked about the at-risk population. Did I mention that on Tuesday? Okay. The origins of charter schools originally were to try to provide an alternative to public schools. Usually within the public school system, the last step before a student is expelled are the, what are they called? The continuation schools. Does anybody know what, okay, actually you know what a continuation school is? Okay, does anybody else know what a continuation school is? It is, Catherine? Yeah, okay. It's literally like the last step where you are placed before you were expelled. You've done some really bad things on campus, and it's, Anyways, so the charter schools emerged as an alternative to continuation schools to provide a little more vocational focus and to help the at-risk students. So those are its origins. Over time, more and more charters began to emerge because parents were just upset at the quality of education in public schools. Okay, so they initiated these charters. Semi-public is probably the best term. It's a hybrid. It's they are semi-autonomous. Is probably the better word. Okay, they are semi-autonomous. Okay. To the degree that, as I say, they get their funding from the public source, public well, they're under levels of scrutiny. There is accountability there. Okay, a lot of people think that charter schools don't have accountability. The purely private, actually that would be a double metaphor. They do have accountability. They have to measure up in standards. But it's very difficult if you take the whole body of charter schools with so many charter schools devoted to the at-risk population. and then throw them in there with the schools like KIPP that are really excelling, okay? And so it's going to skew the performance measures, okay? But the same thing happens in public schools, okay? I just saw a study where once, and this is why I was asking if there was diversity in terms of performance. I just saw one study, and they said, okay, public schools are outperformed by private schools. Another group looked at the same data and said, no, we use hierarchical modeling, which is a form of statistical analysis, and we controlled for all these factors. What were the factors they controlled for? You know, free student lunch program, student disabilities, SES of families, parents' educational background. So all those controls that normally would weigh the the public school population down, because you have to take all the really high advanced students in the AB and the IB program, but throw them in there with all the students who are very, very low performing. So the low performing students brings the average down for everybody. Okay? And so, anyways, the other studies didn't do that. They just looked at straight performance across the board. But anyway, so in terms of in favor of public schools, you have to. Is anybody in a position to argue for the variety, the variability of services they provide? Anybody argue that point? Come on, those of you that say you're going to research in favor. No, Justin, you said you were going to argue in favor of public schools.
No, I changed it to the.
Oh, you changed. What, those articles I sent you? I sent you articles on Common Core.
I used some different articles though.
Oh. All right, so public schools. Variability, variety of services. Okay, can anybody address all the services that the public schools offer that private schools just can't even match? Can anybody argue to that point? Yes,
Talking about
Ashley.
like the government funding.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, we saw evidence of that. Okay, but government funding. Okay, but is that actually a plus? We saw that little news clip, the other day from Bill O'Reilly, and what was his whole point? What does the government tend to do when there's problems in education? Anybody? Well, yeah, they're just going to throw more money at the problem, so that's the solution, okay? And so it's not a matter of just throwing more money, it's about using it judiciously and using it in the right places to, improve student performance, okay? But no, you're absolutely right, there's tons of money there, okay? What are some of the really good programs that public schools offer that private schools can't, that could be related to the source of government funding? Anybody?
Like the IB.
Okay, actually, do you know what? Private schools don't have IP, International Baccalaureate, Advanced Placement, but do you know something? Are these the most expensive programs to run, or are they the cheapest to run? They're the cheapest. You know why? All you have to do is invest in the textbooks. Let's say you're a public school or private school and you want to start an IB. Well, this is a little more sophisticated because you have to send actually in both cases you have to send your teachers out for special training. Okay, back in the day when I taught AP in secondary school, I went down and got the training. And the same thing with IB. IB is a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated. But in both cases, all you have to do is just buy a new set of textbooks. Okay, that corresponds to this AP US History or AP Spanish or whatever. And those are low maintenance classes. The kids tend to be very high performing. They don't need a lot of maintenance. You just need to guide them. And build, August through May, and the first week of May, you hit a crescendo, and boom, you go in and do the test, and next month you go back to class and watch movies or whatever. So those are actually low maintenance programs, okay? What are the really high-end programs? What are the most expensive programs in public school?
Special education.
Yeah, okay. Okay, but you know what? Those kids need that service, and they're not going to get it anywhere else. And there might be some very special schools, like Schools of the Blind, that are private. They're run by a foundation. And but for the most part, students with any kind of learning disability, physical, mental, emotional, behavioral, okay? The special ed programs are really important. And those teachers have a lot of training, okay? Very good. Anything else that goes into the public schools that, in terms of services? We have the high end. What about, is anybody in the, it's a Stenson School of Business. Is it TIF School of Education? Okay, is anybody in the TIF School of Education? Okay, Catherine? Actually, you're not in education? Okay, David, you mentioned you are. Okay, so we have Catherine and David. Okay, really good. So, what is LEP? Anybody know what LEP is? Limited English Proficiency. Okay, in California, it's ESL, English as a second language. In Indiana, it's ELN, English as a new language. Okay, does anybody have any experience with LEP? Okay, okay, very good. Yeah, we have a lot of immigrant children coming into this country. Okay, and what the role? Has anybody had any experience with bilingual education? What is absolutely a prerequisite and is necessary for in order to learn a second language? Anybody? You have to know your first language really well. Okay, so these programs might feature sheltered education, where they really work with the LEP students who are identified as such, and they simultaneously work on the mastery of their first language. Okay, and then they use a very gradual kind of incremental process to work the LEP students into, it's called mainstreaming. They start out with the most non-cognitive demanding courses and the ones that most require more physical, tactile, okay, touching, feeling, touching and moving, using manipulatives. So in the high school curriculum, between social studies on the high end, cognitive, and PE on the physical end, what do you think after PE would be the second most physically tactile, manipulative type course? Come on, all you scientists out there that manipulate objects. Can you make math manipulative to the degree that you're moving things? Yeah, building, the little blocks and those cubes. What are those cubes called? The Cuisinart cubes? Okay, you can make math very manipulative. So anyway, so that requires special training. Those are special students that require special training. Okay, so it's very. I don't know of any private school I've ever encountered that offers LEP. Very few offer for mild learning disabilities. Okay, dyslexia, quite possibly. ADHD. Okay, that's about as far as the private schools can go. If a student has ADHD, what's the remedy? I want to make sure Johnny's on his meds, right? And so private schools can do that. But sometimes, more serious cases. Anybody else want to argue in the affirmative side of public education? By arguing negatively, you're suggesting, no, we should not privatize public education, because public education provides some really good things that we all need.
Would you say anything else for the affirmative side?
Well, you who are going on the affirmative side are going to have a chance to come back and give a rebuttal to these points. So before we get there, let's try to get the board a little fuller. There are some. I can't believe nobody came across.
Wait, so this is saying that the affirmative side is saying that private schools, that you should have private schools?
The affirmative side is answering the question, should public education be privatized? You're answering in the affirmative. You are suggesting that yes, private education is a good model, and public schools should move more in that direction. So in arguing,
Well, I was not saying that.
So you want to argue on that side.
I said my points for that.
Okay, in your article, Marin, did you find anything that supported core, Common Core? Okay, nobody came across articles in research on Common Core. That is the hot ticket. You guys are all talking about No Child Left Behind. I don't even think No Child Left Behind is funded anymore. It ran into funding issues. Okay, it became really expensive for the federal government to maintain. That was one of the downsides. If you look at that PowerPoint presentation that I posted on Blackboard, it mentions that states began, if they wanted to maintain it, they had to fund it internally within the state, because of federal funding, the Congress, began to no longer approve it for funding. Okay, and so all of a sudden by 2010, Common Core, Arnie Duncan is present Education Secretary of Education, and they've been pressing Common Core for at least 2 to 3 years now. I think the states have the option to accept it or reject it. Indiana rejected it. Okay. But 45 states have adopted it. I think in Georgia, I just heard yesterday that, driving here to Mercer, that the governor's appointed a commission, and they're going to take 90 days. They're going to study it. It's open to the public, so public school teachers, anybody using it can chime in, express their professional expertise. After 90 days, they're going to shut it down, look at the evaluations, and then make a recommendation if Georgia should continue using Common Core. Nobody came across Common Core. That is the hot ticket in education right now. It's the rage. Anybody come across Ed Hirsch? Content knowledge or common knowledge. He's written a whole series of textbooks, common knowledge. Nobody came across Ed Hirsch. Ah, gee. Okay, that's unbelievable. Okay, well listen, let me add one point here. On the side of public schools, we know that there's problems, but charter schools may save the day for public schools because it gives, what do parents really want? So somebody mentioned over here, okay, teacher effectiveness. Did anybody come across vouchers?
Yes.
Okay, you came across vouchers. Okay, now vouchers actually is kind of mitigating against public schools because why would public school teachers feel threatened by a voucher system? Why would public school teachers feel threatened by vouchers?
The parents can use those vouchers to go to private.
That's right. You're taking it. The parents choose to take their kids out of the public school, put them in a private school. Why? Because the government pays for it. Does anybody understand what means testing is? What is means testing? Who has their little hand device? Can you look that up, Shane? Means testing. Okay. Basically, vouchers have been tried over the years. A lot of times not successfully. A lot of people complain against it because they think that it does undermine the public school. But if it's means tested and it really is available for underrepresented minority families who feel locked in, as you saw in Waiting for Superman, they feel locked into this system. They have the only option is to send their kids to the really crummy public school down the street. Okay, but according to the video, they call it a failure factory. Okay, so vouchers gives them the opportunity to get their kids into a private school and at least have a chance at a better education, and the state pays for it. What does means tested mean?
It's just testing to see if they're available for government funding.
That's right. Yeah. So they look at indicators such as your income and size of your family and so on. So, anyways, so voucher system actually works against it. But I think that the thing that we'll leave off on here is you really have to emphasize the availability of so many services. If you're in the high end, okay, and you really want academic achievement, okay, you have it in these two programs. If you have special needs, what about getting to school? How do most children get to public school? The big yellow school bus. Okay, what were you going to say?
Well, since I said my points over here, then because I was saying that like public schools have the opportunity just as good as private schools if their teachers like improve.
Right.
And like that's really like one of the only issues with it because.
Okay. Let's segue on that because you know what that is? That's actually an argument. You would be arguing that would be a rebuttal to all the positive things going on inside of public school. You would want to say, well, okay, this is all well and good, but you know what? It's a bastion for bad teachers. Okay, you can hide once you get tenure. Okay, you can hide and just work for the next 25 years, get your paycheck, and not really work very hard. Okay, so how do you? This is the question for those of you that are arguing the rebuttal. We're right here now. We're on the first rebuttal. So you who argued over here now want to offer a rebuttal to the glories of public school. Okay, and tell us why no public school is really your arguments are not strong arguments. Okay, one of the arguments is teacher incentive. How do you produce teacher effectiveness? How do you make sure that teachers are really on top of their game, are effective in delivery and maintaining student interest, drawing students in, keeping them motivated, keeping them moving forward? How do we do that?
Evaluations.
Okay, yeah. So here is, I see over here. Okay, did anybody come across that part of that was built in and No Child Left Behind? Anybody come across that? Go ahead, Megan.
Mine compared it to like pharmacy, how pharmacists have to do continuing education and have to renew their license every so often.
Okay.
Teachers should also have like a workshop thing that they can go to or like have certain things they have to stay updated on.
Okay. Do you know that that is already built in the system? It's every 5 years, a teacher has to renew their license, and it's a contractual thing. So you have to achieve a certain number of professional development hours within that 5-year time frame. And you have to document it and prove it, and you usually have like a superior who's checking your documentation, make sure it's all valid. Yes?
One of the reforms was to keep that system, but to like up it a little bit.
Right.
Because like I know my mom's a pharmacist, so it kind of like struck me as interesting.
Yeah.
She actually has to go to conferences once every 2 years. It's like a 3-day workshop thing that she has, and it counts for like half of community education.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that like can't slip through the cracks. So she
Right.
can't
Yeah. Okay.
fake it.
Yeah, no, that I know in California, it's usually a state-by-state thing. I know in California, Indiana, I'm sure every state has laws in place now to guarantee the upgrade of their teachers. Okay, professional development plan, education never goes away. You're always retooling and stuff. And plus, you know what? Aside from all that, there's constantly new things being spun out of university education departments, being new ways of teaching, upgrading teaching methodology. Teachers are constantly having workshops and in-services in their school site. Okay, they don't even leave campus and go to the local university to take the course or go to a conference. The in-services, that's another thing that's outsourced, is the in-service and upgrading. Okay, and anyway, how else would you provide for teacher effectiveness? What came out in the video, Waiting for Superman, that they suggested would really help? What did Michelle Rhee, when she was superintendent of DC schools, what finally brought her down? Anybody? Remember the scene in the movie? The union voted? What were they voting on? You guys did watch the video, didn't you?
Are you talking about the Asian,
The engine?
the Asian one? That was
Well, yeah, Michelle Rhee, yeah, she became the superintendent of the Washington DC schools.
what nobody wanted, what nobody voted for?
Yeah, what was that?
She was gonna take away the tenure, and she was going to double their wages.
Okay, okay. It wasn't so much doubling wages, it was teacher incentive pay. Okay? See, one of the things that can help public schools become more efficient and better at what they do is to bring the market dynamic inside the public school. Okay, so this is what they suggestion. We should be paying teachers who produce those type of gains in their classroom. Okay, and Jeffrey Canada talked a lot about that in the video, about what it means to be a really good teacher. Remember this? They showed the math teacher at the board who was like doing rap songs to math to rap songs, getting the kids to memorize math formulas or mathematical equations. She had a rap song. That kind of teaching delivery really worked. It's good pedagogy. It maintains student interest. So yeah, we should be paying those students more. We should give them incentive. But at least in that instance, in the Washington, D.C. teaching union, what did they vote? Did they vote in favor of teaching incentives, or they voted down?
They voted down.
Because this maintain the status quo, Don't, if any head pops up, no, we're just going to knock you down, okay? Just, keep it all, oh man, that's a mess. So this is one way that the market can come into public education. And Shane and, who else is Shane and, Wesley, are you in the School of Business? There's somebody else in here. Who else is in the School of Business? Who? He's playing soccer. You guys know that the soccer playoffs are going on here, right? Yeah, okay. Okay. What is the advantage of the market, Shane? What does the market do in terms of products and the firms?
It only necessarily creates more choices at the same
Okay.
price.
So it produces choice. Okay. What else? What does it do for the price of the product?
It will keep it the same or lower it,
Yeah, why?
because it's just privatized, so it's most profitable options are chosen. So usually those are the cheapest.
Okay. What happens if a firm is no longer efficient and can't produce that product at a reasonable price? What happens?
It's closed down.
It gets closed down. Okay. And so bringing the market influence into education provides choice. That's what the voucher system is trying to do, provide choice. That's what the charter system is trying to do, is give parents choice. Okay. And yet at the same time keep some of these things going. You know what else should be here? Is magnet schools. Okay, but you know what? just take a look at these things right here. Aren't these really a feature of the market? Okay, you're allowing choice, okay, of students to participate in those programs, but you know what? These programs are selective. They're basically function like a private school within the public school system. Does the IB program, do they just take anybody and everybody? No, you have to fill out a form, you have to qualify to get in, okay?
You have to
And
take the pre-AP test
if they-
in 8th grade.
Really?
And certain magnet schools, they have requirements, you have to get a certain percentage on the reading and math. For example, the magnet school I went to, you had to get an 80 on reading and math
Sure.
to get in.
Uh-huh.
And since, I think there were 7 magnet schools in my county,
Wow.
but for AP, you have to be recommended, and for IB, you have to be accepted
Yeah.
also based on the pre-AP test. So it won't take just anyone, which is kind of why I went for for private schools,
Uh-huh.
on the private school side, because, I mean, AP and IB programs, yeah, they're offered at public schools, but it's not like it's gonna take anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
They only take a selective amount.
Right, exactly. Okay, so are they not acting and functioning like a private school inside the public school system? I mean, that's one of the big complaints by those in public school is that, and that's why they don't like the voucher system. Because the private schools, they don't have to deal with all this, bureaucracy and mess that we have to deal with in public schools. Okay, well, yeah, but they can institute academic press, academic rigor, and they tend to, because of a selection effect, okay, because their private schools are somewhat selective, and they have a better group of students to work with, and but that's what IB, the AP, and the magnet school programs do. They're very selective, so it's really almost a market approach going on inside the public system. Vouchers give them choice, efficient. Okay, you bring the market system in, and you're going to reward teachers that are performing at a high level. And that's a market principle. So there's a lot of market principles that could be instituted inside the public system that could work. Okay. Now let's go over here to the other rebuttal. How would you argue against these things? Okay. How would you argue? What are some arguments against No Child Left Behind? What are some of the arguments regarding? Okay. Actually, you know what? This actually is a critique of No Child Left Behind. The economic benefits that Dylan brought to the table. Okay, in rebuttal number 2, we want to argue against those that position themselves by saying, yeah, we should privatize public education.
Well, the economic benefit stuff, they usually cut costs by just spending less money per student on everything. That they can cut teacher salaries because they usually don't have to keep them as full teachers. They can keep them on retainer and rotate them in and out. So they pay them less, and also those teachers might be less attentive or just care less because their job security isn't there, so they don't have as much benefit for teaching.
Now, are you saying that's going on in the private or the public?
Private.
In the private,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay. So you're saying one of the downsides of the private is less security. Less security in terms of on your own job. Okay. Why, does anybody know why are more and more employers going to a 30-hour, putting employees on a 30-hour, actually 29-hour shift?
After 30 hours, you have to get benefits.
Yeah, for their reason Shane gave. Yeah, that's right. And you're obligated to give them full benefit package. And so yeah, so that a lot of this has been going on in education for a while. Okay, it's not necessarily anything new. Okay, very good. Someone else has their hand. Okay, go ahead, Marie.
Well, like with private education, like not everyone can afford to do it, and also the charter schools, like I'm saying like not everyone can afford to get into the private schools.
Okay.
And
So
the
private schools are
vouchers,
expensive.
and so the vouchers that are offered to help with this and with the charter schools, there's only a limited amount of them.
Okay, very good. That's good. Yeah. Vouchers are limited. That's a really good point. There's not enough vouchers for everybody, okay? Let's go, Megan and Kat. David, do you want to say something? Or you just scratch your head, or did you have your hand in there?
I have my hand in
Okay, okay, go ahead, Megan.
Okay, I thought it was kind of like, people were arguing that it's like the system's not equal as it is.
Yeah.
So like they need to privatize public schools. I didn't feel that their system of the lottery is very fair.
Okay.
Because you're asking, like watching that the Waiting for Superman, I felt horrible for the little kids that didn't get in because that puts so much pressure on them as a person, as like a 5 or 6 year old, to get into the school, and they're telling them that that's like their only chance at a great education, and it almost produces like a
Failure effect.
failure effect.
Yeah, because then you see like
I looked at the statistics, well, I looked at the statistics of, there was like 7 or 8 children that had to go sit through one of those lottery things and watch their name not be drawn, and they ended up doing like worse through elementary school and middle school than the children who didn't get put in the lottery system and didn't have to go through that failure. It's kind of, I feel
Wow,
like
so
that
that's
produces
not
a
only not
negative
fair, it
effect.
has,
a really negative effect on the children that don't get accepted. I mean, it's awesome for the kids that do get that, like,
yeah, has an effect. Wow, that's.
I didn't think about it until I watched that, it was really sad. And
Oh, it's very
my-
sad. Do you guys know what Megan's talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very sad.
Only 2 of the 5 kids
Disappointing.
got accepted.
Who got accepted?
Only 2 of the 5 children.
Yeah, yeah. No, disappointment felt by the parent as well. I mean, the parents' whole
Well, I feel like
hope.
that's their only chance to get out of the like poor education they're receiving.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
when they don't get that, they feel like they're not gonna go.
Exactly.
And it said like, I had some statistics, there was, sorry. It said something like 10, yeah. They like interviewed people, and 25% more of the students in private schools said they can see themselves going to college after high school, and that was their plan. On the other hand, 10% more of seniors in public school already had a job lined up right out of high school. So they were kind of planning, it's not that they weren't planning ahead, they were planning ahead in a completely different way because they felt they weren't able to go to college.
Right.
And they talked about like how hope is now changing. That doesn't give the people who work really hard in public schools and can't afford college the education they could have received 10 years ago whenever hope was still covering all the tuition and room and board.
Well, yeah, you have a hope scholarship. Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, now you guys, that's why you guys should have come across literature or research on Common Core, because one of Common Core's whole point is recognize that so many kids are graduating high school not ready for college. It's trying to help. Ultimate objective, or one of the ultimate objectives, is to make kids college ready. Okay. And anyways, go ahead, Dave.
I was in the article I read, they're talking about how vouchers were like agreed to the separation of church and state. Because
Yeah.
most private schools are
Okay.
church affiliated and stuff like that.
So vouchers is brings up church-state issues. Did any? Did I? Is this the group? Did I show you the percentages of between private school and public school? What the breakdown is? Did I show you guys that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so religious or private school is about a domain about 10% of all schools in America. Within that, the Catholic schools tend to be the most common. But that's not the only option. I mean, there are other non-faith-based, like we're in Georgia. Doesn't Georgia have like military institutions?
Well, even in Macon, you have a Catholic, you have a Presbyterian, you have a, what, non, like, one who doesn't even teach
Non-sectarian,
religion,
yeah.
a Baptist, there's like 7 or 8 different private schools around.
Is there a military school?
There's one in Milledgeville right now.
Yeah, so I mean, most areas or states have a range of military schools. Okay, and but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that even though it's a violation of church, it's a violation. It may be a violation of church and state. Some people may see it like that, but I was looking at the National Assessment of Education process. In their 2006 report, they showed that private schools outperformed public schools, and in that breakdown, Catholic schools scored Catholic and other religious schools versus public schools.
Right.
The difference was higher
Okay.
than when you just compared public versus.
I'm going to come back. Now, that was the 2006 report.
Yes, sir.
And it was it the National Education? There were two groups.
National Assessment of Education process.
Assessment of Education process. Right. Now, did you come across the corresponding article? There was a war between the NAACP, National Assessment It's the National Center for Assessment and Progress? NACP? Or NC?
I think it's NC. I think I saw when it was NC.
I think it's the National Center. National Center for Academics. Anyways, but there was another one, the coalition between the State Department of Education, I know it had an E in there. It was another group. Pardon me?
National Center.
Well, this is the National Center for.
The other one's
NCES,
from- yeah.
educational statistics.
National Center for Education and Assessment, probably NCAEA, and then there's another. I have the article.
Wait, NCES.
Okay, yeah, NCES.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay, anyway, there was two groups. I left the article. I didn't bring it with me. I left it in my office, but it was right around that time frame, 2006, and they were arguing. The argument was that the group that said no, those that say public school has stronger gains or stronger outcomes than public school, that's because they didn't use hierarchical modeling. So the other group came in and used a statistical analysis we refer to as hierarchical modeling and came out with entirely different outcomes. Okay, but what they did though is that the first group did not take into account. They did not control for socioeconomic status of students, the parents' educational status of the students, the whether or not the student were on the free lunch program, whether or not they had a disability. Okay, they didn't control for those things where the hierarchical modeling did. Okay, so when you take all those things out of the statistical modeling for public schools, then of course the public schools are going to be merged very high. And so that's what happened. And so if it's the same study that I'm referring to, or the war, I should say, the debate, then it just goes to show it's not always easy to really study. You have to disaggregate the data, and you have to have so many conditions that goes into the statistical analysis, and so you just have to qualify how you study the outcomes. But anyway, that is a good point. Okay, but back to David's point, is it the voucher system, when it's controlled, are values not taught in public schools? Are they really value neutral, value free? Okay, one of the big complaints of the Common Core is that the progressives, the pedagogical specialists are trying. The pedagogy focuses on the student, the learning of the student, or this child-centered educational approach. Okay, so it's all about the student. Part of that whole package features social justice. Okay, so the students really are not getting a neutral, free education in both public education. They're getting some type of input regarding favorable toward a particular perspective on social justice. Okay, well the question parents should be asking, well, whose perspective is it on social justice? Okay, and so Jonathan Kozol and others have gone in and they've really written extensively, referring to the American public school system as an apartheid system. Okay, very critical. And so, anyways, so what Ed Hirsch and Common Core have come along and said, no, we need to make education, we need to abandon the whole progressive approach to pedagogy. We need to focus on core knowledge. And when it comes to reading and literacy, the reason why students are deficient in literacy is because they don't have a sufficient base of antecedent knowledge. Okay, they found that students learn to read faster and are better readers and become more literate if they at the same time simultaneously read non-fiction material, basically historical accounts. Okay, and that facilitates their core knowledge and gives them a broader base of knowledge by which to interact with ideas that they're possibly trying to learn through the reading of the text. But also, common knowledge focuses on phonetics. Okay, apparently in the progressive system, phonetics was abandoned. Decoding language, which is part of phonetic understanding, interpreting phonetics, was abandoned. Okay, so core knowledge is brought back, such as approaches to language acquisition as phonics and decoding of the morphology as you read a word and so on. So anyway, so Common Core featuring content-based, content-rich approach to instruction is really It's debated, it's being debated, but I think it's starting to show some positive outcomes. And I think it's less expensive than No Child Left Behind. But anyways, Catherine, what do you want to say?
I was just gonna say, if we switched it all privatized, then we're gonna run into the same problem with funding, because it's like, in order to have a privatized school, someone still has to be funding it.
Okay, no, here's, okay. Part with the voucher system right now gives a family, no money passes through the family hand, it goes right to the school, private school, okay? So there's, the family never touches the money. But what the argument is for privatized education is this. We saw Tuesday how much money goes in to maintain one child in a seat in the classroom in public schools. Something. It ranges by state, but anywhere from 8 to, LA Unified was $25,000, right? So let's say the national average is $12,000, okay? And the government pays $12,000 for every student in public school K to 12. Why not just give that money to the family? Now that's not such a good idea, but the idea that the money goes in a representative of the family to the school of their choice, and then the school, the family shows up, turns in their voucher. It's not a check, it's a voucher, and then the schools turn that voucher in, and then they get the $12,000 from the federal government. That way the government's still spending money in education, okay? But the family gets a family choice, okay? And then the school systems become competitive. So we brought the market in, okay? We brought the market effect in. It gives, obviously, the schools would have incentive to outperform other schools, okay? And so they're going to want, because you're only going to get those vouchers if you're a high-performing school. And that brings the other schools up because they have to compete. And if you can't compete, then you shut down. Let me just ask one quick question before we do shut it down. Does anybody know why so many schools are becoming vacant? There's vacant buildings. School districts are shutting down buildings. They're falling into unused. You see, there's one right over here. When I go home every day, I go down Mount Pellier. Where's Jittery Joe's? It's that way, right? Yeah. I go out by Jittery Joe's and go down toward out Montpelier to Pi Nona, and I go by a big empty school building. Weeds everywhere. That's becoming a common sight all across the country. Why is that?
They're folding schools into like multiple schools into one school to cut down costs.
Right, but why?
So they don't have to hire as many teachers.
No, it's demographics. We didn't get to this 2 weeks ago when we studied labor and sociology of work. Our demographics are experiencing an inversion. Okay, the demographic bubble, we would call it, looked like this probably from definitely after World War II. The baby boomers and so on. We had lots of kids and very few older people. What's the demographic bubble look like today? No, that's wrong. It's the opposite. It's going to go narrow at the bottom and up on top. We have all the older people, baby boomers and beyond, that are retiring. Very few young people. Okay. The millennials and the Xers are not having enough kids. So there's the total population of under 18 is shrinking. So demographically, schools are shutting down and just leaving all these empty buildings vacant because there's not enough kids to fill them up. Okay? So anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Listen, my oak box is over here. Please, there's a stapler right next to it. Please